Hi, I'm Paul from Four Wheel Drive, and today we're shooting the Four Wheel Drive Surf Masterclass series. I've got the funny hat again, so I'll be mic'd up and you can come out with me in the swell. And the purpose of today's video is to just pass on some knowledge and some tips and tricks. It really isn't a showcase of trying to be how to foil really well. It's like how to consider using the thrust, where to use it, how to take off easier, and just overall just tips and tricks on how to use four-wheel drive in the surf. So four-wheel drive's all about making cool product, but also sharing back to the community. Get out there and have heaps of fun. So today, in typical four-wheel drive fashion, everything's new. We've got a custom-made Jimmy Lewis 411. Jimmy, shout out to Jimmy, actually made this board specifically for me. And we're using the new integrated NoLimitz V2 mast, which is amazing. We're rocking the Code 850S and the 158 tail. So max with max power for the biggest run time, because I don't want to come back in. All up, an epic rig, super lightweight, and I absolutely froth it. Like, don't film this, but look how light this thing is. Now, because I'm mic'd up, normally I would duck dive a lot of waves to get out the back, but I'm going to try my best to not wet the microphone and hat straight away. So despite this being a tips and trick video, normally I would duck dive, but I'm gonna do it slightly differently to get out. Again, super crucial, make sure my throttle is off when I'm walking the board out. I've done my usual, check the propeller bolts, put my battery grease on, make sure my nose cone's latched, all my bolts are tight. The usual stuff. I think everyone's pretty capable walking your board out into the water, but me personally, I like to grab the fuselage and the tip of one wing. So I've got a really good just purchase on the board, and I can move it and have it on a slight angle, so then when the wave comes, the board sort of pops up and over the wave. The one that gets a bit deeper, obviously you can't do that. Right, I might start thinking about turning my throttle on as I get closer to leaving the shoreline here. All right, I'm gonna try and time this. Well, there's my first duck dive. Unfortunately, not much avoiding that. Sometimes you can get away with it. Okay. Nearly out of here. So this 411 44 litre board, it's a little bit small for me to get going on the flat water with an 850 wing. So I like to do what's called a J turn. So I'm gonna pretend to catch a wave, and then I'm gonna turn off and do like a J turn. So I'm gonna pretend to go that way, and then I'll turn off at the last second. And as the wave rushes over my wing as I turn back, I'm gonna get extra lift. and that helps me pop up and get on plane. So, all right. So if I had a slightly longer board, which I do ride from time to time as well, I don't need to worry about any of this. But if you do want to ride a really small board and you're heavy like me, this little trick works so well, especially on the smaller wings. So here's a wave now. Me personally, I'd prefer not to catch a breaking whitewater wave. I just find it too aggressive. So build my speed. Now I'm turning off and heading back out. And that boost of energy underneath the wave that went over my wing as I turned into it gave me so much lift. I was able to pop up straight onto foil. Works an absolute treat. All right, try and find my flow. Now, this video is not about trying to show off foiling prowess, because I'm really not that good compared to a lot of our team riders. But so I'm on a wave and I know I want to peel off, so I'm going to pop up, pre-engage the motor and pop it in. So I'm only using about 60%, 65% throttle, and that peeling off, I've still got time, but when I peel off and I push the motor into the water, the blades are already spinning, and it makes for a really smooth transition back into the water. So I'm going to do it again. Not much of a wave here, but just a bit of a lump. So boost, little pop, I'm up. Just gliding, just chill. Try and head back to the camera. So I'm going to peel off to the right, pre-spool, drop the motor in, and it's nice and smooth. A smooth takeoff. If I have too much throttle on and I put the motor in the water, it's incredibly surgy, and it really makes you take off, and it's aggressive. It's just not necessary. It's also annoying for other surfers and water users if you're constantly making the propeller go in and out. So build my speed up, just a little subtle pop. You don't need to, just subtle pop up. Pre-spool, drop it in nice and smooth. So now I'm going to go hunt for a wave. This 20 centimeter position with an integrated mast is just beautiful combination for hybrid foiling back out and hunting a wave. So as I approach a wave, I sort of lift my knees up, whoop, and absorb the wave energy. I find that very helpful, especially when it's an aggressive faced wave close in. So power on and subtle pop. Woohoo! I promised my wife I'd be working today, and technically I am. So I'm riding a real nice lump here. There's not much of a face on it. One thing you want to be careful of when you're riding and you're learning, you want to watch this sort of stuff over here where it's white watery. So I'm going to turn off now. Avoid all that white water and head back out. I've got some friends who have taught to foil, and I always encourage them to just avoid the white water because it's very aggressive. So I'm going to do that again. I can see it starting to wall up a bit and just peel off. And the more shallow you can peel off, the less aggressive that energy of that wave hitting you is. So if I peeled off hard left then, it would have actually been a harder thing to control. So I do it super shallow. Again, joining a wave, if you do it on a slight angle, it gives you more choice and time to choose the right line. So I'm now going to merge with this wave, so I'm coming into it side on, and you try and avoid going dead straight when you're first merging with it, because then you've got more wave face to play with. Oh, this new Mast is so good. It's so buttery. You can pump through it. So right then, I knew I was pushing the limits. I was getting too close to that wave face, and I was not comfortable peeling off and potentially breaching a wingtip and then tacoing on the board. So I just choose to jump off with both feet and just get away from the board. Another J turn here. Peeling off. Back the throttle off a bit. Then I stand up. Super helpful technique. When you're riding, where's the drone? When you're riding, try like really observe the surface of the water. Keep that pod and motor in the water and connected with good drive. You want to avoid it aerating too much. Easier said than done. So now I'm heading back out. This is what four-wheel drive is built for, people. I just love this stuff. I'm heading way back out, way out. Nowhere near any other surfers. There's no one out here. And there's this little lump. Gonna merge and then subtle little pop. You really don't need to force. You do not need to force the motor out of the water. If you're already foiling at speed, there's plenty of energy to just simply change your pitch. And pop up. Less is more on that one. Okay. With these waves, I'm heading into them, I'm absorbing them with my knees. So I'm heading right towards the wave face. I just lift my knees up a little bit and I sort of absorb the energy of the wave. I don't want to like be too rigid and pop up too much and then sort of fall out of the back of the wave and have the wing just completely breach. All right, another beautiful lump of water. So I'm merging, slight turn, power on, and then I just drop it and a tiny bit of back foot pressure. That just helps the board come up a tiny bit. And there's no surging, there's no aggressive takeoff, aggressive sort of maneuver going on there. So now I've got a massive wall of white water. I don't want to get caught in that, so I'm going to pop up and back down. Nice little shoulder here. Woo. Remember, when you're doing your turns, just really give yourself time over many sessions to just feel your limits. You don't want to turn too aggressive and lay into it too hard and taco the board and fall onto the wing. I'm probably stating the obvious there, but I think you've got plenty of opportunity to catch waves. Just take your time and like ease into it, because it all happens pretty quickly if you get it wrong. So I'm going to do a so you can paddle with the controller in your hands. You can actually paddle as well, which feels a little funny at the beginning, but it's really not that hard. So I'm going to get right over the front of the board to keep it flat. Start it going slight bit of speed. Then I'm going to lean into it, full power and paddle. So that was like a normal prone takeoff. So you paddle and then just push up off the board. When you're pushing up, you really don't want to have too much throttle on, because you get too much lift and it's actually harder to control. So I find if you're prone surfing, if I'm predominantly prone surfing, which I actually don't do that much, I'll turn the throttle down and the boost onto like only 2 or 3 seconds, because as soon as I pull that trigger and I'm moving, I've kind of got enough speed, and then I'm not worrying about having the board overpowered. Again, watching that wave face. Don't want to hit the whitewater bit. If you've got too much throttle on, you're going to have this surging effect, like this up, down, up, down, up, down. Just back it off. Back it right down and have it really smooth. Pre-engage the prop, smooth back out. Now I'm just having fun, to be honest. Hard at work. Again, absorbing those bumps, trying to like absorb it with my knees. So here's another one, just absorbing it. Takes the energy out of the wing a bit. Well, it doesn't really. It's taking the compression out of your legs, and you sort of absorb the energy of the wave. I'm going to head right out the back. So again, I'm going to choose a wave. I'm going to choose this nice lump, and I'm going to merge with it with some speed. And I've come onto it diagonally. Now that wave, I mucked it up. I didn't engage early enough. So I kept the board flat, kept the throttle going, and then made sure I didn't ask the board to pop up too soon. Otherwise the wing will stall. So you really want to make sure you've always got the necessary speed before you try and ask it to pop back up and fly. I know it's super obvious, duh, but. So build my speed and then just pop, tiny little subtle pop. Whoop. Didn't have to do very much at all there. This is just classic wind chop mush. The surface isn't smooth, but there's still a lump here and I'm still having fun. How good. Yeah, baby. Also remember, you want to try and keep the pod out of the water. It's very easy to ride too low. And when you ride too low, you're dragging the pod. You can do it, but it's not ideal. Okay, another one. This is more of a right-hander. I kept the throttle on in that turn, only because I knew I was going to bleed heaps of speed, but I have to be real careful that I remember Again, I'm just trying to kiss the top of the ocean, make sure I've got good drive. If my pod's too far out of the water, it makes a horrible noise. That's telling you you're too That was an instance where I knew I was going to crash. So I kept my feet on the board so that when I fell into the water, I knew where it was. And I just find I actually feel way more comfortable just, okay, I know I'm going to fall off. I'm not going to try and save this. I just keep my feet pushed into the board so that when I do fall into the water, the board hasn't got many places to go because my feet are still pushing on the deck of it. So I'm going to show you a duck dive. If you hold the rail of the board, you can actually, with a bit of power under the wave and pop out the other side, which is super handy. I'll go in a bit where it's a bit rougher. Staying super far forward, keeping it planing. So another duck dive. So just a little bit of power, about 20%. Nah, it's not going to work here. I would also recommend staying away from surfers. So there's two surfers over there. I don't need to be over there. I can have my own breaks over here. Just a bit of surf etiquette. Like, there should be plenty of waves for everyone. And if there's not much space, go further out the back. Foil the waves that other people can't ride. It's not hard. Maybe there are some locations where there's just not much choice, but respect the power that you have if you want to keep the sport alive. So here we go, another wave, a bit of white water. Just going to go underneath it. Pop out the other side. Going to wait for a little chip in here. Nice little peak there. Plenty of energy to be borrowed. That was a fail. Remembering to stay right over the nose of the board. Keep that flat as long as you can until you're ready. It's super important to making your job easier. I know it looks simple, but really making a conscious effort to pump over the wind chop and then use your legs to absorb the rough surface of the water, I really find just helps me keep my foil under control and also my motor in the water. If you aerate your prop too much, you do lose drive, obviously, but you lose feel. So now I'm in front of the white water. In my opinion, it's always safer to just go with it. If you're not comfortable riding into it, just peel off and fall with your back into it. I've had very bad experiences trying to turn into white water and losing the wing and nearly falling on it many times. So for me, at my skill level, I just avoid it. I know plenty of people who are very good foilers and they, you know, do whitewater hits and all that cool stuff. For me, I need to go home to my family and I've got to work tomorrow, so I just avoid that contact as much as possible. Here's a good duck dive scenario. Absolutely perfect. Super helpful getting back out, being able to go under it. Another little chip in, little paddle to bumper speed. I really make sure I put my hands on the front of the board, keep the nose of the board pushed down. Otherwise, if I let it get out of control, the nose of the board's going to rise up really quick and I'm going to lose control. And then the board's going to try and come back up at me because there's so much lift that hasn't been tamed. Nice gentle merge, motor off. I don't need to do anything when I'm motoring off. I also find that I don't need to shift my feet position either. I think some really pay attention to your positioning of the Gen 2 on your board. Some people need to, just do their riding style, but I don't shift my feet at all. I find my happy spot and I can just shut the motor off and keep foiling. Now that isn't a tip as much as it is. I spent a long time with my box too far back and just not experimenting enough, really. Foil also does make a big difference to that, but just play with it. Really made a huge difference to my foiling. I think it was Josh Koo that first really pulled me up on it. My box was too far back, and he was right. Woohoo! Another thing when you're heading back out, if you're intimidated with heading back out towards waves, you can go diagonal. So I'm heading like aggressively diagonally back out right now, which just means I have a lot more time to deal with oncoming swell, because the wave, it takes me longer to go over that wave. hunting another big one out here. So this is really rounded. I'm going to build my speed, then pop up. I needed more ground speed before I was going to commit to that pop up because the wave face is super lumpy and not very powerful. Diagonal to the wave gives me more time, and it also, when if the wind coming head on, it takes less power to go diagonal to the wind. If I punch straight into it like I am now, I feel myself having to pull on more throttle to overcome that headwind, and that can actually save quite a bit of battery over a session if you're dealing with a head-on wind. Alright, anyway, I think that's enough. Going to go in, see the boys, hop back up. Super careful here because it gets sandy. Now turn your controller off. Check that it's off. Never walk your board back in with the controller on. It's just silly. You want to have the propeller off, check the throttle, yep. Controller is off. Again, I like to get hold of the wing, control the wing, and the board all the way back in. Hopefully there was some helpful hints there. I'm just an average foiler like most of us, but when you're using Gen 2, there are some things that can make it a lot easier and are a lot harder. Well, I don't think we missed anything there. Subtle things like J-turns, so helpful, especially as everyone's riding smaller and smaller wings on smaller and smaller boards, needing bigger horsepower to get going. Those J-turns, when you come down the face and you turn off and that wave energy rushes over the wing, it makes such a big difference to getting up. And without it, I can't ride small boards and small wings, which is pretty much what I want to ride. So that is the number one takeaway from this, is if you're really struggling with getting going, you want to use the wave energy and the motor to couple it up. Now, if you just ran a slightly longer board, I mean, this is being a 411, if you ran a longer board, you can get up easily on the flat, and I do it all the time. But when you go down in board, down in wing, down in length, use that wave energy to get going. Again, I can't stress enough, just take your time, ease your way into it. Don't get too aggressive in the turns too quickly. Just sort of feel your limits. You've got plenty of opportunity to catch lots of waves, don't rush it. Whitewater, try not to foil back into it, is my advice. It's just, it can be dangerous. If you're not sure about being able to turn off the wave to head back out because it's starting to break, I recommend you just ride with it and just jump off when you feel safe. I've had too many close calls when I'm on a wave face and it's coming in and it's white watering and it's breaking, and I'm like, oh, I think I can just sort of nip over the top and get down, and I get slapped with the white water and it slaps the board out from underneath me and I nearly fall on top of the wing, and it's super dicey. It's just play it safe, be careful. Turn your throttle off, make sure the motor is off when you're walking into the water and when you're walking out of the water. It's just, don't ever risk it, just turn it off. Keeping low and absorbing the wave energy when it's coming towards you really helps keep the pod engaged. You want to keep the motor in the water and that wave's coming towards you, you can just soak it up. And then as the wave goes under you, you're pushing your legs back out, it helps the board sink back down and that wave goes up and underneath you, and you go, and you don't change height as much. If you keep your legs too rigid and you're falling at a wave and the wave comes underneath you, sort of the whole board and you go up too much, and you can pop off the top and the wing can come out the back of the wave and you breach and you fall off. So absorb that wave energy. Again, really paying attention to like keeping your hands on the rail of the board and bringing your body further up the nose to keep it flat. When a wave's coming up behind you and all this energy's there, if you're not far enough forward, the board's just going to want to tilt and it's just going to tip you off because the wing just wants to lift. It's got so much energy, so really control that nose. For my takeoffs, it might have been hard to see on the drone, but I lay the remote on the side of the board and I sort of grab the rails and I give it boost. And then when I'm ready to stand up, I back the throttle off a bit, put my hands on there, keep pushing the nose in, and then I crawl to my feet. Then I stand up, then I allow the board off the water. If you let the board off the water too early and it starts flying, whilst you're trying to stand to your feet, it gets super unstable. And again, you can fall off and you can cop a wing. Duck diving, same thing. Make sure that you flatten the board, grab the nose, throttle, push it under the wave, give it a little bit of blip of throttle to power you under the wave and pop out the other side. And if you keep your momentum, you can get out the back really quickly because you're not getting drawn back by the swell. I think that's enough from me. Hopefully there was something useful in there. There's still plenty to learn. I don't know it all by any stretch. I'm still learning every time I go out. But after riding this system, Gen 2, for nearly 2.5 years, some of these things weren't initially obvious to me. And I've learnt them as I've gone along, and it's made my experience so much better. Goodbye. Coffee time now, boys. It's quite weird being able to talk to the cameraman who's standing on a cliff when you're in the middle of the ocean. It's good fun though. Hopefully you enjoyed watching that. Again, it was just real short, sharp tips and tricks I've learned over the last few years. Didn't lose the silly hat, even though I had to duck dive straight away and got it wet. It's not a masterclass in how to be an epic foiler, it's just how to use the gear properly and some tips and tricks that might make it easier for your progression into the surf foiling. So keep sending in those requests and we'll keep making videos. Thanks for joining me. Have fun.